Welcome into the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball podcast on the KSR Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio. Very excited to be joined once again by one half of our Smith collection here on Sources Say, Spencer Smith. How you doing, bud? How you been?
I'm good. We're inching closer to football season, which means that we're one step closer to basketball season, which is great. So I'm doing pretty good, Jack.
Yeah, this year is unique for me because I am just so unbelievably excited for the start of the Will Stein era, and I got all the way in on the because of me quotes at SEC Media Days and all that it definitely got me feeling some type of way about football starting up. And we just got the email from Media Day next week in Lexington. We got an open practice on later on in the week, so a couple things that are all right, I'm ready for this. But it is definitely the appetizer for the entree for us here at Sources Say with Kentucky basketball season. A massive year 3 coming up for Mark Pope. And we got a couple of big time updates. He's kind of going on a little press tour of sorts. And, first he was hitting a lot of the national podcast with the John Rothsteins of the world and all that. And then hosted his first summer press conference. We got some massive updates on Friday morning, the earliest press conference I can remember at 8 o'clock in the morning. Started at 8 or 9, whatever it was, but just super bright and early podcast or press conference with Pope. Shared some massive injury updates, some roster building updates, what his plan is for that 15th roster spots. We'll talk about all of that. Got to talk about La Familia and TBT and how that Wednesday night battle against the Kansas alums. That's scheduled for 7 p.m. on Wednesday night. We'll talk about that, preview that, and just how much we care about hanging a banner at Memorial Coliseum. Do we hang a TBT banner in Memorial Coliseum if they win this whole thing? We'll talk about that and all that good stuff. But and then we have mailbag questions. Got a ton of questions on KS board from the mailbag asking, stupid, ridiculous stuff, but also very serious and kind of long-term hot takey things. So we'll run through a lot of that stuff. It's going to be a jam-packed show today. Very excited for it. But we'll start with, I think, probably the most important update as it relates to some of the developments we've talked about on this show over the last several weeks, and just kind of things that we've heard and I've been concerned about, but finally got clarity on. But I think the biggest one is Cam Williams. Got the confirmation finally from Mark Pope that he did indeed undergo a second follow-up procedure on his injured foot, broke it again back to start the SEC play. Missed 7 weeks, came back, and it was an awesome story. Super happy for him to come back and hit big shots in the SEC tournament and NCAA tournament. But then we got some details from Pope about how his progress stalled out quite a bit, and it got to a point where he kind of just stuck at 90% and it was not healing properly, and they decided to move forward with a follow-up procedure on his foot. So now that we kind of suspected that, but now that we have the clarity and some finality with it, Spencer, how does that make you feel? Or as one Jerry Tipton would say before, back in the good old days, how does that play on your mind?
Yeah, disappointing, obviously in one vein, but obviously in the other one, it's good because we want to address it now. Cam, I think, is going to be a really, really important piece for this team. I think we need him to really come along and deliver in a couple of big areas, including obviously shot making is going to be a big one. It can't just be Milan out there. And obviously defensively, he was one of our better pieces that we could put on the floor. Like his defensive metrics and everything, his efficiency rating on that end of the floor last year was really good. And our team was a lot better defensively as a unit when he was on the court. So we do really need him to be healthy. This summer was a really good opportunity. I'm bummed for the kid because this summer was a really good opportunity for him to take that step forward. I told you, Jack, my vision for Cam would have been like a junior year Darius Miller, where he's a guy with size. You can put him at all sorts of different places on the court, high post, short corner, deep corner. You can put him on the wing, and he can kind of make things happen for you. He can make shots. He can kind of be a rebounding presence a little bit, kind of be a little bit of a mismatch depending on who you're going up against. And Darius, I think that year averaged about 10 or 11 points a game. He shot somewhere in the low 40s from three. That would have been a great year for Cam. And maybe Cam can still get there, but I think this summer was just really important for him. And obviously he fought so hard to come back for March Madness last year. like, got to give all the props in the world to the kid. I'm sure he wasn't feeling good, but he did it for the team. And then to have a setback, that's a big bummer for him personally. So I'm glad we're addressing it now, though, and fingers crossed he'll be ready to go come November.
And I saw Brandon Ramsey kind of saying, what are we missing here? This is a positive. Like, this is a massive piece of good news for the team to get out in front of it, to get the procedure done, to give him the best chance at a full season. So on my end, where things started getting a little fishy and just, I was like, something is clearly not right with this, is, they were very outspoken, some of the sources that I spoke to early on, about like, he's in a boot just because, it's a soft boot that no setbacks, no follow-up procedures. Like the doctor just recommended, like, they throughout the off season can, continue to follow up MRIs and, trying to just get to the bottom of his foot and make sure that there weren't any setbacks and that it was healing properly. And it was for the longest time, but it got to a point where it did kind of plateau a little bit. And that's where they transitioned to the soft boot. And they said, there's not a big deal, but just want to see if by getting him off of his feet and not, adding the unnecessary wear and tear to it, like how it continues to heal from there. And then nothing changed in that regard. And then we just hear through the grapevine that he shows up one day on a scooter, transitioning to a hard cast, and you go, that's not somebody who's just trying to take a load off like that. You only transition to a hard boot and non-weight bearing the way that he did. And but then even still, when I talked to sources around Cam, they even still stressed that they didn't want to say outright that he had the surgery, but said this was the path to making sure that he played a full season. Like they were very confident that he would be there for the start of the year and all that. But again, they were also very confident about Jaden Quaintance being there to start the season. So I get that Kentucky fans are probably a little cautious moving forward about any big time injury updates, that Mark Pope's verbiage with this isn't that far off from his verbiage with Jaden Quaintance. So I get it. Be as skeptical as you want to be, but I think that this is the best chance at him playing whether it's a full season or 3/4 of the full season or whatever, that playing most of the season, that this was the only path. I think the worst thing that could have happened was, he tries to just rest it and nothing happens. Then he re-breaks it in October and then we're screwed. Like at that point, then odds are good he does miss the full season. And we kind of set ourselves back for a full year. So, when do you expect do you expect him to play the full season at this stage, and how quickly do you think that he will be back to the version of Cam Williams that we knew when he was kind of peaking around Texas when he did break his foot?
Yeah, good question. I do expect it. Maybe that's cautious optimism. I don't know anything about the injury, obviously, or the timeline on like when he had the surgery or whatever, but I would expect him to play. It sounds like he had the surgery in like June, probably. It was somewhere in like mid to late June. And so the initial injury, he was back in 7 weeks, obviously probably needed a little bit longer, but like, let's just say you're really cautious and you give him 12 to 16 weeks. That still puts you back come September, October. So start of practice will be mid to kind of the back half of September. So if he could make it back by the start of practice, I think that would be really good. You can be a little bit more cautious and do conditioning stuff with him through August, and then maybe aim to kind of ease him back into 5-on-5 stuff in the beginning of September, and then maybe he's fully back come practice. But that's a total guess on my end. But I think that would be good because, as we saw with Oweh last year and all sorts of guys that like had different injury things, like it takes you a little while to get back into the rhythm of the game. And if he's been off the court since April, it's going to take him, I would guess, at least 4 to 6 weeks to feel comfortable with kind of where he's at.
Yeah. Follow-up question to that. What pressure does this put on Braden Hawthorne to continue to maximize his next couple of weeks? We're winding down with the summer, but really once we transition into late August, early September preseason practices of, okay, now it's time to decide what the rotation is going to be. Now it's going to, it's put up or shut up time to see who's going to play and who's not. We'd heard some things early on that maybe, not that he was bad necessarily, but not taking the leap that we kind of needed him to, and had some concerns that would he ever be able, like when if not now, when for a guy like Braden Hawthorne, who really did nothing but kind of develop and use, year one as just a preparing for this year two jump. And we didn't necessarily hear much of that early on. To his credit, I've heard over the last, week or two that he's starting to make shots and kind of show a little bit of some of those flashes a little bit more consistently. So what pressure is on him to kind of close the gap of that pressure, but the potential between, the gap between potential and production?
Yeah, you just, the summer is all about improving and getting better, and also feeling out kind of, hey, what's my role on this team going to be? I think, with Braden, you can pretty confidently say he's not going to be like the go-to guy. Like we've got Milan and we've got Wilkins and Zoom and Malachi. And, we kind of have guys who we feel really good about what maybe their role is going to be. And so for Braden, it's like, okay, where can I fit in to complement that? Making shots is a big part of it. Like living in the gym every day, every night. Can you get up 500 shots a day? Can you make 300 threes a day? Can you do that type of stuff? And then like, where else do you really fit? Like what other value do you provide? Like, are you selling out defensively to where every defensive possession you're like, I'm just going to be a pest? Because he's really long. He's really, really agile. Like he can probably do some fun stuff athletically on the defensive end, which would be really good. Are you just like a crazy energy guy where you just like bring an unbelievable amount of energy to every possession, to the point where like anytime Pope feels like the team is lacking a little bit in that department, we're off to a slow start, we're coming out of the locker room slow, like let's get Braden out there because he's going to get us going. Mm-hmm. Where you're diving on the floor and you're kind of selling out and you're trying to take charges and you're doing the little things that like maybe a guy like Milan isn't doing necessarily. Like Milan's maybe not putting his body on the line and diving on the ground on every possession, but can you be that guy who does that type of stuff? So I think for him, just really identifying like, who can I be on this team? And hopefully the coaches are helping him get there. What can I provide? And then we talked about it with Trent Noah last time I was on. Making shots gets you a really, really long way. If you can just make shots, make open threes. We've got two really good creators in Wilkins and Zoom. You've got Milan, who's going to be a big gravity guy. You're going to be able to dump it down into Malachi, and maybe he draws doubles. We're going to get out and run a lot. There's going to be space for a guy like a Cam or a Braden or a Trent to just find a pocket, find a corner somewhere, and just make a shot. And if you can do that, your value skyrockets. So a lot of time for Braden. It's good to hear we're hearing good things about him here in the back half of the summer, and hopefully he keeps building on it.
Yeah. I think Trent is, like you said, it's in a similar mold there. Unfortunately, he also went down with his own little, pulled hammy. He's been out, and I've heard on my end that there's not an expectation he's going to be back in time for the end of the summer, which stinks. Again, all of this stinks. Good update though, Justin McBride back, around the team. He Mark Pope clarified that he had a viral illness, and that's why he was just away from the team for as long as he was. Had a week and a half, 2 weeks that he was gone, and just wasn't around anything. And he was like, did this guy just disappear? Like he started off hot and then just poof, he's gone. So it's good to hear that he is back on campus and back around the team, and starting to ramp himself back up. So how much do you think that's going to impact? So much of Justin McBride has been about like weight training and cutting the bad weight and adding muscle and all that. Like, is it a setback to cut some weight with the viral illness, or like how does that with the muscle recovery, all that stuff? Like, I don't know if that's a pro or a con for him to probably inevitably lose 15-20 pounds from whatever the illness that he dealt with.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it obviously helps that he was on campus when it happened, because then, the training staff and the nutritionists and stuff can kind of do some stuff to help mitigate that a little bit. So they handle it a little bit differently than if you and I had a viral illness and we're just sitting on the couch for a couple of weeks. But yeah, it's definitely a bummer for him, because again, he was a guy who had some good momentum, I think, coming out of the beginning of the summer and stuff, and then to kind of have a couple of weeks where you're out of it. Now it'll take you a week or two to get back into it. And so now it's all of a sudden it's mid-August. And so that's kind of a bummer. But let's get the illnesses out of the way. We used to joke at a couple of my last spots, like, should we just try to get our guys sick? Should we try to get them sick with the flu in the summer so that maybe they built up some immunity and they don't get it in February? So maybe that'll work to our favor, and maybe he won't have some mysterious illness in the middle of the year, and that'll be great.
It was funny. I interviewed a Brady Pettigrew, a 2028 kid, and at Peach Jam, and he, for the first time, I don't know if you've been around a lot of recruits and kids coming in at various schools and locations of the country, but for the very first time, a kid said that he would be making a recruiting decision based not entirely, but in part with the allergies and how like pollen levels and things like that in the area. And it was funny. I put that story out there, that interview, and the quote was hilarious. Like, it was just a funny thing for a kid to say. Usually it's, oh, basketball fit, family feel, yada, yada. Like, I've heard the same quote 1,000 times doing this job. And that was the first time it was like, well, I mean, if you're going to be here for 10 months or whatever for at minimum, and then, potentially multiple years or whatever, like, I do feel like you'd want to prioritize something like that. If you have bad allergies, I feel like that is something you'd prioritize. So that part was hilarious. Have you? And it was funny, just the response to it. Everybody was like, "Well, this kid ain't going to Kentucky because allergies in Lexington are absolute garbage." So good luck wherever you go, kid, because then it ain't gonna be Lexington. It's like, damn it, that sucked. That kind of backfired. But what was the craziest recruiting story you've heard, or an experience you've had with that?
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, so just talking on allergies, we had a kid who, I won't say the kid's name, but we had a kid when I was in South Florida who we applied for a waiver for. And we actually used allergies as a reason for part of it, because he missed a lot. Yeah, we missed a lot. He missed a lot of time at his previous school. And it wasn't like one thing. It was like he got this injury for whatever amount of games. And then so it was a harder waiver to put together, because if it's a torn ACL, it's like, well, that's easy. It was like he missed 6 games because of this, and he came back for 2, and then this setback happened, or whatever. And part of the waiver was he was sick all the time because where he was living, his allergies flared up a lot. He gave him lung issues. He had difficulty breathing. It was all because of this allergy issue that he had. And now that he's moving to Florida, he won't have that anymore. So he should get a waiver. So it was like a snippet of, hey, he had these 2 or 3 injuries plus really bad allergies that caused breathing problems. And we used that to apply for a waiver. I won't tell you if we got it or not, just to try to keep it anonymous. But yeah, I mean, it does come into it. I mean, teams use whatever. Recruiting wise, man, what was the most interesting thing? We had a kid at OU who made a big deal because he didn't think that the barbecue was as good in Oklahoma as it was in Texas. And he was thinking about a Texas school, and he was from Texas, and he like ate a lot of Texas barbecue. And I remember him and his dad both like made a big deal over the Oklahoma barbecue. Like, this just isn't as good. It doesn't hit. Like, where are we going to go? You know what I mean? And like, he did not end up picking us. And I always wonder if the barbecue played a part of that, like we just didn't pick the right barbecue spots. I mean, they're 17, 18-year-old kids, they're going to take into account whatever, but health stuff is important. Like, if allergies are really bad and they're hurting your breathing, like I could understand that being, and you're right. The allergies in Kentucky are bad. So maybe that's not the top 10. Who knows?
Well, following Brady Pettigrew's recruitment is going to be fascinating. Kentucky did end up pulling the trigger on an offer, and they were sitting there courtside. So we'll see. Good player. He was a fun watch over the course of the week at Peach Jam. I thoroughly enjoyed it. A couple of other notes from the press conference. Some things that you were passionate about, particularly with that 15th roster spot, and pretty vocal about needing to upgrade the roster if there is a path to that. And he said that. For the very first time, he was openly exploring 5th-year options for, depending on how this, the NCAA nonsense unfolds, and whether or not they get sued to oblivion or end up just kind of saying, "Uncle, I don't want to get sued to oblivion, and when I'm not going to push back on this any further, fine. You guys get your 5th year, shut up, and I'll go away." So that he was including 5th-year possibilities alongside reclass options, and of course international guys for that 15th spot. So anything change on your end about what Pope should be looking for with this 15th spot? Do you still think that it needs to be an immediate impact talent upgrade?
I think I would like it to be, especially given the Cam situation, only because you just never know with feet. Feet are so fickle. Like, you could re-injure it and all that. Like, I don't think that's going to happen, knock on wood. Like, and I know Cam's working really hard, and again, he's such a valuable piece, but knowing that is a possibility, it's like, do you really want to kind of put yourself in that position again? So I would still like to see another one. I still think like another kind of perimeter ball handler, playmaker off the bench would be really helpful. I've also seen arguments made around like Frank has his own injury problems, and so like what if that rears its ugly head, and now you've got maybe Usman Njai playing the 5, or you're having to go small a little bit more. Now we're having to shift Milan to the 4 more and things like that. So I could see the argument as well there for a big. I just think I think those are probably the 2 needs, and I think you probably just take the most talented, like best option, or maybe the one that projects them for a year or 2 or something. So I would still like to see them do it. People have floated a Hampton reclass. Maybe that's on the table. People have floated some European options. I know 5th-year guys. Obviously, the Keyshawn Hall kid from Auburn came up this week. The Cade Tyson kid's been floated, and like things like that. So who knows what some of those other kind of weird cases for eligibility go. But I would like to see them add somebody. And then it's better to have too much talent, too much healthy talent than not enough. And so let's just err on the side of caution.
Call your shot. Do 5th years get the year? What ends up being the final result?
I don't see a pathway for it to happen because teams have already made roster decisions based on the NCAA's ruling that they can't. If the NCAA were to go back on that now, 1, it's a really bad look. 2, you're going to inevitably like have scholarships pulled right before the season starts. Maybe you grandfather it in and you say, oh, well, for this year, you can go up to 17. And it's like, well, that's great, but it still doesn't solve the core issue, which is, hey, we've recruited a roster a certain way thinking that this guy couldn't come back to us. And now all of a sudden he can't, you know what I mean? And there are guys who signed professional contracts or stayed in the NBA draft or signed, with the G League or have gone to Europe or whatever, have started working at State Farm. Who knows? Like there are guys who have gone and done that.
I have a non-compete. I can't get
out of it. I got a quota to hit this month, like there are guys who have done that. And so now you're like, okay, like you've made a decision. I think you need to stick to it. And there will be lawsuits that come. But like with Denzel Aberdeen, I don't see a path for them winning that. I think winning that lawsuit, unless the NCAA is like, we just don't want the fight and we don't want it to pay our lawyers more money. So here you go. So that's my guess. But with the NCAA, who knows? Because they are as unpredictable as the government at this point. It's like, who knows what they're going to do,
That's fair. A couple of other updates and we'll keep moving right along. Players had to earn their practice uniforms this summer with conditioning. Your thoughts on that? And Pope talked about the foreign trips, and we knew that the one to Jerusalem was going to happen, got canceled. There's the Bahamas thing, which is hilarious that Louisville, right as we speak right now, is trying to play their Bahamian opponent, and they like have 7 players that can play, and it's not live streamed or televised or anything. It's just an absolute cluster. So I think that's just kind of hilarious knowing that we could have been in those shoes. But Pope said that he'd love for foreign trips to become domestic and kind of find a way to, revenue opportunities here within the States and do something comparable. We saw John Rothstein put an update that summer exhibitions could end up being, just playing other colleges. So your take on both of those things about earning practice uniforms and foreign tours?
Earning practice uniforms is fine. Whatever is a motivator, like different coaches, different guys use different things to motivate. I think that's, I've never been a part of a team that did that, but I've heard of teams doing that before. I think that's okay to do. Sorry, what'd you say it was a conditioning test?
It was condition. Yeah, they passed all the conditioning tests. They do the 17s, and they put them through the ringer to if once you can't get your practice uniform until you pass all of your deal. So
okay, yeah, we did different things. We tried to motivate guys with sleep, where we said until you if you didn't pass your conditioning test, then you had to keep coming in at 6 a.m. every day to get weighed and do like vitals and stuff. But if you passed your conditioning test, you didn't have to do that. You could sleep until I think their first classes were usually at like 8:30. So there's all sorts of motivating things out there that you can do, but I think that's interesting. With the foreign tour, I'm a bit split on it. Pope's got good ideas. He's always got good ideas. Keeping it domestic makes sense. Like go out to Vegas, like what they did, and like meet up with 3 or 4 other teams. I think something though that's cool about the foreign tour aspect is you get the guys an experience that maybe they wouldn't otherwise have. Like you take them to Europe, you take them to, like when I was at OU, we did New Zealand. We also did France. When I was at USF, we did Canada, which wasn't as, as alluring, but we did Montreal for a week, which was fun. But like you get guys out of the U.S. Like a lot of these guys have never left the U.S. A lot of these guys are like don't even have passports, So it's like because maybe their families couldn't afford it, or maybe it just wasn't a priority for them growing up because they played so much basketball in the summer and they had school. And so like you're like, yeah, hey guys, we're loading up. We're going to France. We're going to England. We're going to wherever. You're going to get to experience a different culture, eat different food. Like that's a really cool thing that they'll probably look back on in their 40s and 50s and be like, that's really cool. If you just meet up with a few teams in Atlanta, how does it feel any different than an AAU tournament to them? So that's the only downside. But yeah, if you can drive revenue for it and maybe some NIL dollars and some TV stuff or whatever, that's great too. It's college sports now. So I'm open to whatever Pope wants to do as long as it's a good experience for the guys and it gets us better and we're ready for the year. So I'm good with it either way.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet J-Bat would, if there's any path to NIL revenue, find ways to put money in these kids' pockets and, maybe, get creative in certain ways with that so they didn't have to cut corners elsewhere, whatever the case is, that the J-Bat would look at that and go, we're on the same level. Now we're speaking the same language. So I'm sure he would be all aboard that train as well. Also got a Mark Pope radio hit with Alan Cutler. The Cut Man himself had 24 minutes with Mark Pope, and I listened to it. It was some good stuff. But I think probably the most important thing that came from it was he opened up a little bit more about the final assistant coaching position that's still vacant. It will not be Jamal Crawford. Went through all that nonsense and finally got clarity on that one. But definitely acknowledged that he was still looking. I know there was that, the Nick Robinson stuff was out there, and I had heard on my end that he was operating as kind of the interim guy. I received some solid clarity on that during the live period that Nick Robinson is not expected to be the long-term hire for that assistant role, that he's still looking. I've heard on my end that he's interviewed 25, 30 candidates up to this point, and he's really trying to just leave no stone unturned and really do this search right and do it justice for what he's looking for and what this program needs going into such a massive season. So we got kind of quotes for the very first time from Pope, like extensive about what that interview processes look like and all that stuff. And he brought up LSU by name. And I thought that was kind of fascinating. I'm going to pull up the quotes right now and get your take on those. But said that he was still really considering an international staff hire and recently met with a high profile candidate about it. But I think the most important part of it was, I'll be 100% frank with you. I think what LSU has done is going to be really interesting. They've really pushed the envelope with the NCAA right now, and they're in a position where I think they're going to end up having to challenge a lot of existing rules with the NCAA. That's going to be very telling. It's going to be telling with us whether you feel like we absolutely have to have an international coach or you don't. If this turns into a thing where a 28-year-old 6-year EuroLeague veteran can find their way back to college, and that's the rules that we're playing by, then it's going to be ever important that you do have a heavy international influence on your staff. So kind of acknowledge that if it doesn't work that way and those guys do get ruled ineligible, the whole roster that LSU has, they're all 26 years old and have 2 kids and on their second marriages, as John Calipari liked to say. So if it doesn't work out that way and they're all ineligible, then it's more status quo, and we can go get a guy with a tie to a certain recruit or a specialty in something or a certain niche or whatever. So how do you want Mark Pope to move forward with this last assistant staff hire?
Yeah, you got 2 buckets. You've got a guy who can help you get players, which maybe that's the European route, or maybe that's just a hot shot kind of young guy who was in really good with some 27s and 28s and stuff. Like that's bucket 1. Bucket 2 is you bring in a guy who can be a specialty. He can be like a guy who is like one of the better front court coaches in the country. He can really develop big men. He really is really good about like the X's and O's, both offensively and defensively, for how to position bigs and stuff, and how to kind of maximize their potential. You can hire like a defensive specialist, like you look at some of the better defensive teams in the country. Who are they year over year? Hire somebody from that staff to be like, you are coming to bring your defensive principles to us and make us one of the best, top 10, top 15 defensive teams in the country, for instance. So you can hire a specialist like that. I tend to lean more towards let's get somebody who can get us players, and then we'll figure it out from there. But I also see the other side of the coin. So it would be good. It's just so much of it rides on the NCAA and what they're going to do. And like there's this congressional bill. It's called the SCORE Act, which basically what it's trying to do is grant them exemption from antitrust laws, which would be like the NBA, which would basically just mean the NCAA can set their own guidelines and their own rules, and it can't really be challenged like the way that it can be now. So it's like, do you really want to go towards a model where you really want to lean in on the European stuff, and then stuff gets passed in Congress, and then the NCAA passes additional rules, and all of a sudden that avenue gets locked down again, and now you have somebody on staff who maybe isn't a good fit anymore. So it's hard. Again, this is like an ever-changing landscape in college basketball, but I would lean towards like, let's go get somebody who can get us some dudes, whether it's European or whether it's 27s or 28s. But on the flip side of that, I'd like to see us get somebody who's a real defensive mind or really good in the front court, because I think we could probably use another guy on staff who's a really big front court guy.
I think it's something I have heard on my end that did interest me, and I kind of respect it, just to be honest, because it is kind of such a taboo thing that you hire somebody to get a guy. That I have heard on my end that Pope is not afraid to go get Skip to my Lou, to go get Reese Alston, to go hire. It's not happening this cycle, but Jamal Crawford to go get JJ Crawford. Something to that effect of like. There is value of having one of those types of guys on your staff anyway, from a recruiting standpoint, not just to get one specific kid, but to creatively add recruiting juice to the room on top of a very direct specific advantage with one individual kid. So I think that was something that jumped out at me, where like they have not shut down any of these kids, these top recruits, hiring a family member, hiring a AAU coach, or somebody with a connection to a kid to make sure that I think everybody knows that the recruiting perception with this program has to improve, and it has definitely improved with Ryan Hampton, but not cutting any corners moving forward of like, hey, just because we got one doesn't mean that we're totally fixed. Like we might have to pay a suck tax, overpay a little bit to start with, to get some momentum for the next couple of cycles, and to if what it takes is hiring somebody close to somebody, like they're not gonna force the issue, but if that's what it takes to kind of clear the gap and separate yourself from another guy with comparable money or whatever, then that's what it's going to take. So I thought that part was interesting, and I'm for it. Are you opposed to that, or you say screw it, let's go all in?
I'm not opposed to it, as long as like it can't just be for that. Like you can't hire if memory serves, nobody get mad at me if I'm wrong, but I think Louisville hired like Marcus Teague's uncle or something, right? Mm-hmm. Or like back when they wanted Marcus Teague, and then as soon as Teague committed elsewhere, they fired him or something, right? Like I think there was something like that. Like you can't hire a guy who his sole value or her sole value would be delivering that kid. And it's like, you don't really bring us any value beyond that. Mm-hmm. Like if you hire a Jamal Crawford, you're hiring a guy with 30 years of basketball experience, who's a really respected name, and you know what I mean? And knows how to coach. You know what I mean? Like, so hire a guy who, yes, can get you a kid, but also provides value once that kid hopefully maybe goes to the NBA or something like that. As long as it's like that, then I'm over the moon about it. Great, let's do it. If it's just to get the kid, then I'm not necessarily for it.
Yeah, I totally agree. So we'll see if we get some momentum with something like that here sooner rather than later. Working through some of the topics. So I guess let's, we got a big one coming up tomorrow night with La Familia and that TBT run taking on the Kansas alums. I don't know. Did you see the end of the game last night? That was just a brouhaha, and it turned into an absolute mess. So your take on what La Familia has done up to this point. I know we were a little pessimistic, a little sour on how things were unfolding early on, but now I think just about everybody with this fan base has bought it.
Yeah, it's tough early on with the the uncertainty around the roster and guys hurt and sick and kids and stuff like that makes it hard. It's easy to forget like these guys are human beings. They have things going on. They have jobs. They're playing elsewhere. Like, you know what I mean? Their whole world can't revolve around TBT as much as we might want it to. But like what they've settled into right now is really fun. They've done a really good job. And John Hood's done a good job, which has been fun to watch. He's super passionate over there, which I think is fun. I was rooting for Kansas last night because I just think that's kind of a sexier draw, like Kentucky versus Kansas. I think I think it could be a really fun kind of thing and get some more fans out. You got Frank Mason, you got Zeke Mayo, you got some fun matchups. I think Frank Mason came to Rupp one of those years. I can't remember if they won or lost that one, but I think Frank Mason's played in Rupp before. Obviously, they're not playing in Rupp, but I think he's played against the Cats before. So yeah, I think it could be really cool. I hope, like, I don't know what's going on with like DeAndre Liggins. I think he's hurt maybe and stuff. So it'd be good if they got healthy and everybody was feeling good. Maybe Marcus Lee gets out there. I don't know what's going on there, but it's been really fun. And I think, right, Jack, if they win this game, they go to the championship.
That's it. Yep.
Right?
You win. You beat Kansas, and then you take on. I think something that if I had a gripe with this event, it's that the non-alum championship, I think, is a little like, I don't know. I feel like the championship should be tomorrow night. Like, I think they've earned that this should be Memorial Coliseum to college. Kansas, Kentucky. We have the 2012 angle. We have the Tyron Stokes angle of what's to come with the Champions Classic this winter. Like, I think that in itself. They're calling it the Alumni Finals. And it's like the event at its core was an alumni event. Like, it was designed to be schools guys representing all their schools and all that. Last year's event, it was solely that. And now we're kind of transitioning to where you got to beat all of the alums. And then they're like a whole separate event going on in Vegas right now with non-alums, like Karam Cantor, who's kind of that like island of misfit toys, doesn't really belong to anybody. They're just like they're just exist in the basketball stratosphere. They're all competing in their own separate event in Vegas and working their way up toward through their own bracket, their non-alumni bracket, to play us in the championship if we win tomorrow night. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like there should be more juice for the final for the $2 million. Like, if we make it to the final and then lose to some group of guys who just came together like a pickup game this summer, like, I don't know. I don't think they deserve the $2 million the way that this team and like Willie Cauley-Stein for being through this process 3 years, the Harrison twins being through this process for 3 years. I don't know. It feels a little. I feel like the $2 million should be handed out tomorrow night, but I don't know. Maybe I'm stupid.
I don't necessarily disagree. I think, well, it's also weird because you've got two different brackets that are playing by two different rules. I mean, one has 8 teams, the other one has 6, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And on the alumni side, you have rules. Like, you have to have a certain amount of kids from your school in order to qualify as an alumni team. So maybe there was a better player out there that you could have gotten, but you're kind of married to this rule. So all of a sudden we have to sign X, Y, Z or whatever. I'm not saying that happened with La Familia, but that's like the structure that all these alumni teams had to go with. Versus the other side of the bracket, they can just sign whoever they want, And so it's like, yeah, you've got two different brackets playing by two different rules. One has more than the other. It doesn't really seem apples to apples on getting there, but whatever. Let's just go win the damn thing anyways. Who cares?
That's what I like hearing. It was funny to me. I forgot, like, I saw Carlton Bragg's name pop up last night watching the Kansas game, and I was like, there is something specific about Carlton Bragg's recruitment in Kentucky that I just can't remember what it was that made him such a polarizing kid. And like, when he committed, it was just like this eye-opening thing. And I just looked it up. You remember when he announced his commitment and he said, I'm committing to the University of Kentucky, and put on a Kansas hat? And he was like, oh, wait, no, I mean Kansas. You remember that?
I don't remember that. No.
Yeah. Like, it was a big high profile kid. Like, he visited Kentucky. Like, he was a, solid recruit that Coach Cal was going after, 5-star power forward, and had it cut down to Illinois, Kansas, and Kentucky for his final 3. And when he made his commitment, he said, I'm committing to, I think he said Kentucky University, maybe is how he said it. But it just like, everybody was like, so wait, which one is it? And then he put on the Kansas hat, and he was like, no, it's Kansas. It's Kansas. So Little blast down memory lane there. I got totally like that hit a part of my brain that I just didn't even remember that I had.
I don't remember that. I remember he didn't pan out super well at Kansas. I think he transferred.
No, he wasn't very good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was the 2015 class, I think. So he would have been with Jamal Murray and Ulis and those guys. Yeah, we could have used him. Yeah. No, I don't remember that though. That's interesting.
Yeah, he said he's gonna play at Kentucky, and then he said Kansas. I'm sorry.
So kind of the reverse Terrence Jones a little bit, but he just fixed it on the spot. That's interesting. No, I don't remember that.
Let's see. Let's just go down memory lane with it. He averaged 3.8 points as a freshman. He played 4 years in college. Not a good sign. In pre NIL and pre transfer portal, that's not a good look. 5.2 points and 4.1 rebounds in year 2. Ended up being pretty solid, 10.5, 8.8 points, rebounds, and then closed things out and he transferred to New Mexico for his junior and senior year, and then he finished things out the COVID year, averaging 12.6 points and 10.3 rebounds a game. So that's way more Carlton Bragg than I ever thought that we would be talking about on this show in the year 2026. But hell, you know, that's what TBT's for, baby. These are life's precious moments. All right, let's keep this thing rolling. Let's see. Wanted to hit on a couple more things before we answered questions from maybe SEC schedule release. Any big takeaways from the official release yesterday from the SEC about we knew the what and where of these games, but we didn't know the when. So what jumped out at you when we got the official release yesterday?
Yeah, so I texted you, Jack, and for the listeners, I'm feeling very bullish about this. I'm feeling very bullish about the way our schedule sets up. Like again, I mentioned it last time on the pod. Like I don't like our non-conference schedule doesn't terrify me. I like all those games are super winnable. At Virginia is definitely tough. Like Louisville, North Carolina, Kansas are tough games. We can win all those games, right? So like let's just be optimistic and say we drop 1, maybe 2 in the non-conference. It sets up in the SEC slate where you can very realistically, like you should almost be favored to start 7-0. There's maybe one game that maybe we wouldn't be favored, but like at Oklahoma, home against Ole Miss, you should win both of those. At Missouri is the one that I don't know if we'll be favored or not, but like that's a very winnable game still on its own. You're at Missouri on a Saturday. Last time we went to Como, we came out with a win, which was good. LSU at home, return to Mo Diabate. Vanderbilt at home, should win both of those. At Mississippi State, they have not beaten us since the Truman administration, so that's a win. And then Tennessee, which is Mark Pope's son. So that's like we're
look
rolling
at you,
right
Spencer. Look at you. Look at you getting a little chesty with it. I love it.
He's 4-1. He's 4-1 against Ricky B down there, and I think and the fact that they're coming to us first, that's a really good thing. So the first 7 games of the SEC slate, you're like, man, you're set up to kind of maybe go 7-0 in that stretch, maybe 6-1. But so if you drop only 1 or 2 in the non-conference, you're looking at your first 20 games of the regular season, you're 17-3, 18-2. That's really good. You're almost certainly top 10 in the country. You've got a lot of momentum. You're feeling good. Guys have settled into their role. Guys have bought in at that point. It's always really good to start hot because then guys buy into their roles. If you start poorly, kind of like last year for us, guys start to question their roles and they start to doubt it, and it takes longer to maybe eventually get them there. If you start hot, the guys they get that immediate payoff and they're like, oh, what we're doing is working. I should do more of that. And they really buy in. So yeah, you could be looking at like an 18-2 start to start the year. And then you get into a tougher slate. You got at Texas in the back half, at Tennessee in the back half, at Florida in the back half, so on and so forth. But like overall, I'm really pleased with our schedule. I don't think it's one of the harder schedules in the SEC. You get Alabama only once at home. Arkansas only once at home. Auburn only once at home. You only have to play Florida once. You only have to play Texas once. Those are 5 of the top 6 teams in the SEC, not counting Kentucky. And you only have to play them 1 time. And then you get Tennessee twice, and Vandy will be tough and stuff. So there are definitely tough games. But I actually really like how the slate is set up for us, and I think we could definitely get some momentum early, which is great.
Yeah, and it allows Kentucky to kind of build some beer muscles And, if I just remember where we were post Missouri, where it's probably closer to Alabama, because that was, I think people forget that they were totally healthy for that game. Like, that was the full roster top to bottom. Like, Jalen Lowe played well. Jaden Quaintance played a full game. Like, they were at full strength for that matchup and got run out of the gym. And I remember leaving that one knowing that we had lost, the two lost the first 4 name brand opponents to start the year, built some momentum against Indiana. That was, that we knew that Indiana was down. So it didn't feel as good. It felt good just to get the first one, but didn't feel the way it should have, when we saw that game on the schedule. And then you felt like you were right back where you needed to be against St. John's. And then to start SEC play, the way those 2 games unfolded, Jaden Quaintance especially not looking right after Missouri, and then we never see him again. Like, I just remember where I was thinking, like, man, we have dug ourselves a hole that I don't know how you dig out of it. Like, I don't know how we're going to recover from this. So it can have the reverse effect where you build up, kind of like Vanderbilt last year, where they just ran through the non-conference, beat up on everybody, and they kind of turned into the media darling of the SEC. And they finished as, number 4 seed in the league and played really well. And maybe slight frauds, but they were good. Like, it was a good team, and they earned it by taking care of business in the early games the way they should have, and then having a solid SEC season to finish a year, super strong and have a good little, NCAA tournament push. So you can kind of have that same effect where you just build confidence, you run through the non-conference, get that 6-0, 7-0 start or whatever in the league, and then you're starting out 17-1, 18-1, whatever, and you're like, well, damn, let's just finish the job. Let's see if we can close out this regular season with 7 losses, 6 losses, whatever. So you can lose, you then build up that cushion, and you don't have to kind of go into a Florida game and just feel like I don't know how we're going to do this. You kind of play with house money at that point. We're like, well, shoot, we've already positioned ourselves super well. Like, what difference does it make? So I'd love to be able to have some pressure-free games down the stretch and account for maybe some injury bug or whatever. Just having a cushion would be really nice. So, and I think the way the schedule laid out, it's definitely allowed for that. So, we're on the same page there. I didn't agree with some of the criticisms and some of the pushback about how the SEC schedule looked for Kentucky. I think it's going to be just fine. All right.
I think, sorry, one last thing on that. One of my favorite traditions that we have going right now at Kentucky is we always seem to, on one Saturday afternoon in mid to late February, we just absolutely blitz a pretty good team at home. We just blow them out of the water. No matter what kind of a season we're having, every year we blitz somebody towards the end of February at home. Last year it was Vandy. The year before that, I've got it pulled up here. It was, who did we blitz? I think it was maybe Tennessee. Vandy again. We blitzed Vandy by 25 points. The year before, if you remember, we blitzed Alabama. That was the not Aduthier. That was the Justin Edwards game.
10 for 10, baby.
The year before that, we blitzed Auburn again. They came in as like a top 15 team, and we blew them out by like 40. So anyways, we always blitz somebody towards the end of February at home. And our 2 home Saturday games at the end of February are Arkansas and who is the other one? And Auburn again. So early candidates for teams that we might blow out late in the year if you want to get your Vegas bets in early.
Not to be pocket watching anybody else, but Louisville and that Bahamian team are tied right now at 17 apiece. So
who's on that Bahamian? Is Mikhail down there? Is he coaching that team?
No, it's the Bahamian select team. Could you imagine if Mikhail McLean was coaching right now against Louisville? That'd be hilarious.
I was like, I haven't heard anything about that, but I feel like, I always try to keep track of the Bahamian team because of Buddy Hield, but he's not obviously playing in that. But all right, go Bahamas. Let's see what they did.
Tied 19 apiece. I think there's a stat broadcast for that I can pull up while we're going through some of these message board questions. Just to, poke some fun is always a good time. All right, let's get our mailbag going. We'll see how many we can get through these before you got to jump off here. So, see, I'm producing on the fly because Steven's technically doing another radio show at the same time. So we're slowly but surely getting through this. All right, Sources say mailbag coming from KS Board. All right. Copenhagen long cut. If the season were to start tomorrow, who would start at the 4, Spencer?
I would start Njai without knowing too much because I like the size at the 4. So I want some positional size there. So Njai at the 4, Milan at the 3.
I don't even think it's that much of a controversial take, to be honest. I think pretty confidently that it'll be Njai starting at the 4 to begin the year, unless Justin comes out and just absolutely crushes it in the preseason. But I think we should feel pretty good about Njai. And I think he's going to be a good 4. Like I think he's an upgrade over either of the 4s that Kentucky had this past season. I'm a big fan of him. Dizzle 79, based on the news about Cam Williams having another surgery, do you expect him to be healthy for the beginning of the season? If not, who steps up in his spot on the roster, or do they push for a Ryan Hampton reclass? I'll take this one. I have heard that he's going to be healthy for the start of the year, but as I said earlier in the show, there was a lot of hearing stuff that didn't end up coming true for Jaden Quainton. So we will see, but that's the expectation. Pope said himself that the hope is that he's going to be available for the full season. But if not, who steps up in his spot on the roster? It's got to be Braden Hawthorne. Like we just gotta get something out of him. And then do you push for a Ryan Hampton reclass? We didn't get to mention him earlier with 15th roster spot stuff. I think he's a great, we have him in the back pocket. I've heard he's one credit away, like one final, I don't know if he has a single class or whatever, but he's one something away from being eligible right now to be a reclass candidate. So I would not. I've kind of changed my mind after watching him at Peach Jam. I don't think that he is ready to be a serious contributor in year one. He's a solid player. He's a great athlete, toolsy, but I think there's a lot to work through before we can reliably, trust him to make a big time impact at probably what would be expected of him if he were to come in and reclass, and what we know about everybody, all the other pieces on the roster and what this team needs. So I think he'd be another project that Kentucky would add. And I don't think that they need another project on the roster at this stage, but I would rather have him than nothing. Like if we get to a point later in the process, or even once we get to, going into the end of the non-conference and need somebody for the spring semester, add somebody at the winter break. Like I think there are definitely worse players that you can add than Ryan Hampton. Like if Cam doesn't recover the way we hope or whatever, then you definitely move forward with Ryan. And I still like having him in my back pocket, but I would rather hold off and see if the 5 fifth-year guys get cleared, or if another international talent kind of falls from the heavens. So TBD on that one. Hoochie Man, are there any legs to Ryan Hampton reclass? If it were up to Ryan and people around him, I'd say that they would prefer to reclass. If it were up to Kentucky, I don't think that they would prefer to bring him in right now. JSP 94. This one's for you, Spencer. Just how much is Pope on the hot seat? What does he have to do on/off the court, recruiting wise, specifically to keep his job?
I don't really want to get into that. I think Pope is great. I think he's smart. I think he has the vision for what he wants it to be. I think he for the most part delivered on it year one. And I think if that team was healthy, we would have talked about a real potential Final Four threat. Year two didn't deliver, so I think year three needs to kind of get back more towards year one and get back to who we are and like what he does and his identity for the team and the program and stuff. And get some real juice on the recruiting trail. Ryan Hampton's a good start, and I think we're in pretty good with some of these kind of top end guys in the 27 class. But as you said, Jack, like 27 is not that strong of a class. It's not like last year's class of 2025 where it's like you're going to get 9 out of the 10 top picks in the NBA are coming out of the freshman class. Like you're not going to get that. So being really diligent with who he adds, and then laying the groundwork early for who do we need to target? And I think a whole year of having Keegan Brown helps. Maybe some additional kind of structure and resources around that, reinvestment in NIL dollars with Jay Blatt or Jay Batt. So let's see. I don't really want to get into, hey, he has to do this in order to keep his job. He knows the assignment. He says it over and over again. He knows what he needs to do to get there. And I think nobody's holding himself accountable more than he is. So let's just see what this year holds, and let's support them, and let's see where we get to.
Yeah, I think this safest way to answer that, and this my real answer is just has to be progress. Like we can't take any steps back, and then like I think the only path to something like that, where that even becomes a conversation, is if we kind of start trending the wrong direction. And I just don't think under new leadership that J-Bat would be willing to accept something like that, especially with him not being a J-Bat hire. Like I think he would want to kind of make his own statement if something were to like seriously deteriorate to the point where it's like that we're not moving in the same in the direction that I want to, make with a statement in my first year. So, but outside of that, like I think if he makes progress, and like I want him to, like I want this to work, and I think that he has the tools and has kind of made some decisions internally that make me believe that we're trending closer toward it being an upgrade than a downgrade going into this upcoming season. And I think that's all it's going to take. So yeah, I feel pretty confidently that we'll be just fine going into, the season, and maybe not the championship hope that we have. Like I've still struggled to see how this team puts together. Maybe it's the chemistry dynamic or whatever. Like that's the possibility that we kind of didn't account for with that first roster. Like they were just so close and played so well together that this team could potentially do something like that. But I have a hard time believing like this team's not going to stink. Like I think it's going to be a solid team at minimum, and I think they'll give themselves a chance to make a second weekend and see how far you can go from there. Anon, bunch of numbers. Will Trent Noah actually play this year, Spencer?
We talked about it on the last time I was on. It's up to him. He's just got to make shots. He does other stuff well. He rebounds fairly well for his spot. Like he provides energy. He doesn't make a ton of mistakes. Like he's not super turnover prone. He's not like in the wrong spot all the time. He does good stuff when he's out there. He just has to make shots. And I think it was a rhythm thing for him maybe in the first couple of years and this and that, unless he's playing Tennessee, in which case he has good rhythm, or that one possession against Arkansas. I said it on the last time we were on the pod, when he went down to Fayetteville last year, that is Trent Noah. That is what Trent Noah can give us. He hit a three. He hit a couple big shots in timely moments. He spaced the floor. He knocked down free throws. He rebounded. I think he got like 7 or 8 rebounds in that game. That is who Trent Noah can be. And if he can give that, then absolutely you play him. You play him 10 times out of 10. But it's got to be dependent upon him making shots and stuff. So I'm going to err on the side of optimism and say, yeah, he's going to come back from this hamstring thing and be healthy, and he's going to make shots for us.
I like the way you think, Spencer. I think that's a good little answer right there. KYJD, I'd like to see an over-under set on average threes per game. Whether we go over-under and whether hitting the mark will be critical to team success. Basically, do we live and die by the three, and is that a good idea?
Is that for me?
Sure.
It's a good question. I don't think that. I think Pope said he wants Milan to get to 10 per game. I don't know if that's realistic. Only because he's going to be defended. I mean, he's going to be defended in such a way that I don't know if that's really doable. I think like 24, 25 is like a realistic like over under to kind of put it at and kind of see where we get to. Let me see what we shot in his first year. Let me pull up. Not the Rob Dillingham team. What did we shoot in his first year? We shot 848 threes. And how many games did we play? We played 36. Break out my calculator. KS Sport has me doing math. So yeah, we were at 23.5 in year one. So that's exactly what I said, right? I said 20. I said 24. That's perfect. So let's put the over under again at 23.5. If we can shoot more than that year one team, I think I'd be happy. If we shoot less, then I'm maybe a little bit less happy. But 23.5 is the over under, and I would take the over.
There we go. I like it. Finn's fan, is UNC the heavy favorite for Rosser, or does UK still have a decent chance? Yeah, I think they're still firmly in it. I think that they've done some heavy lifting there and have done some good things to be a player. I think that it won't just come down to there are more people in his camp than just mom and CJ, like making mom happy. Like there are a couple of other players in his recruitment that could swing things another direction, that could be more money oriented and making certain promises or whatever. So that's just kind of one of the complicated things. But in general, he has been a homebody, and kind of he's been on our show before, and he's a good old country boy who just loves kind of the small town feel and being local and all that stuff. And that definitely plays in UNC's favor. But I think Kentucky is still right there in that top 3 at minimum. Like Arkansas, there's a connection there that could make Arkansas a threat because of Coach Cal. But, I think it's still too early to say like UNC's trending heavily and it's going to be finalized sooner rather than later. Like I think I would say UNC's the favorite, but I would say Kentucky is a co-favorite, maybe maybe 1A 1B type of situation. So I wouldn't lose a bunch of hope on that one yet. I think that they're still firmly in it, but we'll see. Honestly, I think more than anything is it's going to be timing, because I do think that they're trending, and there are a couple other questions about other guys that Kentucky has traction with. They have some good traction with Reese Alston, and I've heard that he would like to make a decision like October-ish, and like I think he's going to take a visit to Kentucky in October. So if you commit big money to a couple of freshmen like they have with Ryan Hampton and going to Wood with Reese Alston, like do you go 3 big dollar true freshmen? Kind of goes against Pope's philosophy if he's already kind of checked some of the PR boxes of landing 5-star talent. So I don't know. I think a lot of it is order of operations and how desperate he gets, but they're definitely not like on the outside looking in to the point where they wouldn't have a chance to land roster. I still think that they're still right there. Cap fan, would Mark Pope approve of the treatment of the Cyclops in the Odyssey, or would he have been a conscientious objector? Have you seen the Odyssey yet?
I haven't seen it. Can we skip this one? I haven't seen it. I don't want any spoilers.
All right, fair enough.
I mean, I know it's like spoilers. It's a 1,000-year-old book or whatever.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything, but
no, I'm going to try to go see it.
I don't think Mark Pope would have been. I'll try to be vague for you, Spencer, since you still got to go see it. I don't think he would approve. I don't think he would have gloated in the same way with the Cyclops and led to some of the other shenanigans that happened with Poseidon after the fact. If we want to keep it vague in that regard. All right, Captain Mach 96, who could with a Wenyen Gabriel avatar? Who could surprise in the rebounding department? I think everybody agrees rebounding is going to be a question mark with this team. So is there a guard or wing who can step up and fill that need? I know you're Trent Noah maybe coming in and grabbing some tough boards, but who else jumps out at you in that regard that could step up on the glass?
Yeah, Trent, I think is a good candidate. I mean, Milan's got to be a little bit more productive than what he was in the last year or two. So, like, you need Milan to kind of do his thing. Cam, if healthy, if he's going to play kind of big minutes and kind of be one of those swing type guys, we need him to kind of get in there and rough and tumble with the boards a bit. And then Njai is not like, his natural instinct is not to rebound. His natural instinct is a little bit more of like I'm going to float around the perimeter and kind of float like a butterfly type of guy, but he's got to get in there and really he's got to get really, really, like, it's got to be very habitual. Like, the ball goes up, I'm going to the rim, I'm finding a body to hit, right? If it's a long shot, you don't want to run to the rim, you want to settle into the middle somewhere, but like, he's got to develop those instincts of like, I got to be a ball hawk a little bit and stick my nose in there and influence some. So I think a lot of our rebounding, either success or woes, will land on Njai, and he's got to probably deliver it if he can.
JC 82. Well, probably 5. What's your heart out time wise? You got 10 more minutes, 5 more minutes.
I probably have to go, Jack. I'm being pinged about a 4-month-old having a fit.
Oh no!
So you can carry on the pod without me, but I might have to go support my wife and not get divorced at some point today. That would be good.
How dare you? All right, we'll get out of here. Where can fans find your work? I'll wrap up with a couple.
Yeah, Spencer_Smith10 on Twitter is where you can find me. Go follow me. I think I'm almost to 2,000 followers, which is not very many compared to Jack, but it'd be good to get there.
Hey, it's a process. It's a marathon, not a sprint. All right, Spencer, go save the day. Go be a husband of the year.
Thanks, guys. Go Cats.
All right, let's there we go. Again, I'm producing on the fly, so this is just ridiculous. Maybe nope, not that one. This is just stupid. There we go. Yeah. All right. That works for the time being. JC82, how much impact did having a GM have on the portal, and will it continue to be beneficial in its current state moving forward? Massive. I think Keegan Brown is awesome at what he does. He did an interview with the Catechin, which is another podcast I'm a big fan of. They're awesome at what they do. And he just kind of went through and just said, like, hey, a lot of what I'm doing is just taking kind of the pressure off Pope and just giving him options and giving him stuff to work with. And I think that's like been half of my gripes with a lot of this, is just making sure that Pope, doesn't have too much on his plate and can, I want him to have the final say so on a lot of these decisions, but don't make him do the scouring to the ends of the earth and finding these guys himself. Have people be bringing him talent and let him choose between yes, no, maybe, sifting through the pile or whatever. So I think Keegan did a great job this cycle. And I do think like more support staff help. Like there's never such thing as too much. So I would love for Pope to continue. And I believe he had another job on the UK job listing. There was one open for another support staff role that actually had the same title that Keegan Brown had when he first took the job before he transitioned into director of roster management. So definitely that's something that's definitely in the works, and we'll see who that ends up being, hopefully sooner rather than later. In there says fill in the blank. We'll know that UK is a top 10 team when Malachi averages blank points per game, blank rebounds per game, and blank blocks per game. I think if Malachi can go out there and average 13.5 points per game, 10 rebounds per game, and a block and a half a game, I think Kentucky can be right there in the mix as a top 10 team. Like something like tangible jumps at all those major stat lines. Like I don't want to see 10, 8, and confusing. All right. Sorry. So yeah, I think 13 and a half, 14 is, let's call it 14, 10 and 1.5. And I think that Kentucky would be a top 10 team in college basketball, because I think a lot of the other stuff around him would make life easier. And I think a lot of it is just staying healthy, like being able to play 30. Like, can we add minutes to that too? If we can say that he's averaging 30 minutes a game, I think that we can say 10 minutes, because I think that would allow Frank to stay as healthy as possible and, not have to lean too heavily on Reese Potter and go down the list. Scratchy Cat, how much is Pope on the hot seat? Will be good enough. We already talked about that. The Big Blue Spectacle. If the moon was made out of cream cheese, would you eat it? Obviously. Why would you? It's not even a real question. G Money 1421, with realistically 12 guys that come in minutes and only 200 to go around. How do you see the rotation shaking out? A little concerned that might be too many mouths to feed, especially if Cam, Frank are healthy and Mason, Braden, Noah live up to the hype that the staff has given. Pope has said all the time, like just repeatedly, that his ideal situation is having kind of 10, 11 person rotation that allows you to, play fewer minutes and not have to stretch people out too thin. Like let everybody play in that 20 to 25 minute range. I said it's kind of being contradictory with the, my request for Malachi. So I want him to be a 30-minute per game guy just to take the load off of Frank a little bit. But I'd say as of right now, I'm not seeing a path to rotation minutes for Jerome Morton. I think Braden is on the lower end of the rotation as things are currently unfolding with, I need to pull the roster up. So I'm not going in totally blind, but I think Jerome's probably on the outside. Zion Hawthorne is on the outside. I would not expect him to play a whole lot. Braden, we'll see. Cam, again, we will see if Cam's healthy, he will be in the rotation. But I think only one of those guys is going to be a regular, top 8 in the rotation contributor. Mason Williams, I think, is going to play into like that, ninth man, a kind of guy. I think he'll he'll play. But he could be more of a Dominique Hawkins kind of impact guy where it's going to be one game. He might play 14, 15 minutes. The next game, he might play 4. So that one's TBD. Trent Noah kind of along the lower end, but still an impact guy, as we talked about before. Alex Wilkins is going to play a lot. Frank Kepnong going to play, but hopefully not too much. Usman, he's going to play. Just McBride, I think he's going to be definitely like 7th man. Like he's going to be on the higher end of that. Milan's going to obviously play a ton. Malachi is going to play a ton. Reese Potter, I think, is down there with the Jerome Mortons and Zion Hawthorns of the world of probably not playing a whole heck of a lot. So, but again, I think a lot of that is subject to change as we get into the preseason, but that's just how things are kind of unfolding with guys who have been separating themselves in summer workouts and guys that are still have some questions left to be answered. Talked about Devin Hunt, asked about the 15 spot, talked about that. Cade Tyson, I would like. Some people that know him wonder about like how the mental makeup would work at a place like Kentucky and if like the spotlight would be too big for him. But we'll see. You know, that I'd still love that in terms of a basketball fit. Hank, any intel on who was struggling the most with conditioning? Pope mentioned that they had guys that just earned their jerseys in that recent presser, but no one really pushed him on it. I mean, we have seen Braden Hawthorne not wear his jersey often, so that's just a hunch on my part. But I do know that Malachi, they've been really trying to fine-tune his conditioning and try to, lean him out. And I think it was kind of a thought that he was going to kind of bulk up a little bit and turn more muscly than lean, and they've gone more on the lean side and wanting him to be a little bit more of a finesse guy. So I've heard that they're doing some things like boxing and try to creative ways to address conditioning with him and put him in a spot to again play 30 minutes is a goal for him this upcoming season. So we'll see how that one works out. Basketball 10, who have been your favorite guys to interview in your time working for KSR? I think just in terms of like star power, like it was cool talking to like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was my first interview doing this job. Like one of the first days I had on the job as a full timer was sitting down with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I didn't know at the time that he was going to become Shai, but I think that is just really cool looking at back in hindsight. Like, whoa, I can't believe that. And then probably the other coolest one was I got credentialed to a Minnesota Timberwolves game. I had family. And it's annoying me because it's playing over top of me. It probably looks so ridiculous on the. Here we go. Just pause it. All right. Oh, sorry, that was annoying. But yeah, family up in Minnesota. So when he was playing there, I applied for a media credential, not expecting to get it. I was still an intern at the time with KSR, and I got one. And I specifically requested Kat, and I was just like, hey, I'm an intern. I'm still a UK student. Any chance that Kat would be willing to like spend some one-on-one time with me? And Kat was like, absolutely, anything for KSR, anything for UK. It was the best year of my life. There's nothing I want more than to do that. So that part was really, really cool for him to make time for a little teenager like me. There's no business for him to do what he did, and he did. So I really appreciate that. One former Wildcat you could add to this upcoming team, who would it be? DeMarcus Cousins, just an absolute stud at the center position to pair with Malachi Moreno. Like I think that's a layup for sure. Starting 5 prediction this year: Zoom Diallo, Alex Wilkins, Milan Momcilovic, Usman Njai, Malachi Moreno. I feel pretty confident that's what it's going to end up being. Funniest basketball player in your opinion since you started covering Kentucky basketball? Ugonna Onyenso was absolutely freaking hilarious. Like gave just the most hilarious quotes possible, and was so clever and like genuine. Like there are some guys that you kind of see through and they're like, this guy doesn't believe a word that he's saying. Just kind of whatever. But Ugonna was definitely in that top tier of like, wow, he's freaking hilarious. If you go on any road trip with any member of KSR, who would it be? Zach Gagan, because that's my boy, and I just did. We went on a bachelor trip to Savannah. That was over the weekend. That was a lot of fun, and I am in detox mode because your boy hit a little too hard, if you know what I'm saying. What has been your favorite memory while working for KSR and covering Kentucky basketball? Going to Sweet 16 for the first time. I was just it's what I do this for. Like I want Kentucky to win basketball games. I'm a diehard Kentucky fan. Graduated, my siblings went to UK. I've stayed at the dorms when I was a child, when my siblings, my sister especially, they were at UK. So I grew up on campus. I grew up around the basketball team. Like this is what I do. Like I love it more than anything in the world. And for them to, for my first time seeing it with my own two eyes, covering this job, covering this team, doing this job, to go to Sweet 16 by far was the coolest moment for me. Moxie, what in particular does Jerome Morton bring to the table for this team? How does he fit best into the lineup? Again, like I mentioned before, big Jerome Morton fan, but I think the issue with him is a level of confidence that he belongs as a shot maker. And as like he was brought in to make shots. And there have been times that he's kind of passed up on shots and hasn't asserted himself into the offense the way he needs to and what he was brought in to do. And I know it's kind of led to some frustration. Like, Jerome, buddy, you're capable. Like, show us that you're capable. You show us that confidence that you belong. I know he can. I know he's capable, but we just haven't seen it up to this point. But outside of that, he has been really good defensively. Like he's picked up 94 feet and he's been kind of a pest and has been physical and he's really tried to muck things up for the guards and has made life difficult for Zoom Diallo and Alex Wilkins. So, I love what he brings to the table defensively, but I got to see more from him on the offensive end. SD Cat fan 13, how likely is it they fill out the last assistant coaching spot for the season? Very high. How many high school recruits will Kentucky take for the 2027 recruiting class? I asked specifically this question and I got a kind of TBD. As I mentioned earlier, it's going to work out with timelines of everybody. And, if they land a big fish in October, do they need to build a ton more momentum? And like generally a down 2027 class. So I don't think it's in Pope's preference to go load up on high school kids when he can, get experience in the portal and the 5-5 works out now. There's no reason why you can't load up on a, super senior or fifth year or whatever they're going to be calling them this upcoming year. So TBD on that one. Lots of questions about the 15th guy, lots of questions about Hampton reclass. We've already addressed that. More about 27 class. Chin Coleman's glasses. How would the addition of Chin Coleman to the coaching staff help this team? If you know. Very funny. Ghost of Verdaber. I don't know what that is. How much has the addition of Mo Williams helped our standing on the recruiting trail? Has he been a game changer as far as perception with the recruits? 10 out of 10. Yes. Every kid that I talked to at Peach Jam, I mean, you wouldn't believe. It's almost become like a 1A, 1B deal with Pope, where when kids talk about Pope, they just bring up Mo Williams themselves. Like, oh man, I love Mo. Like Pope's good, Pope's nice, Pope's this, Pope's that. But man, I love Mo. I love how he's approaching this. I love, his experience. I love that he was a world champion. I love that he was an all-star. It's Mo, which by the way, shout out Mo, who just had his 8th child, 8 children. Goodness gracious, buddy. That is a lot of work. And I respect your ability to do that. But man, that's a lot. So congrats and wish you the best over the next couple of months as, sleepy nights end up kind of stacking up on you and going to the Joe Kraft Center, probably a little bit exhausted. Sources say relax. This Keyshawn Hall or Cade Tyson, if he wins his appeal case, a real possibility for UK. Pope is definitely going to explore some of those options. I think Cade makes more sense positionally in pairing him next to Milan Momcilovic. I think that'd be absolutely sick from a shooting perspective. But also Keyshawn Hall, as a downhill driver and kind of giving you a different look. More personality questions with him and what we'd see, but you're on the right track of guys that there's some real talent out there potentially if this 5th year thing unfolds. So we will see how the appeals work out on that one. Andrew Dyke, now that we have the schedule out, can we get game by game predictions? Not this show, but we will very, very soon. Race non-verba. I have a gut feeling that Alex Wilkins could be the X factor for this team to make a run. What says you? I also agree with that. I think he's been awesome. I've heard really, really, really good stuff about him in practice as being a shot maker. Finding as a ball dominant guard who kind of Rob Dillingham-y in terms of getting his game off. A little bit ISO heavy at times, and like how does that fit in with a very ball movement heavy offense? There have been moments of where there have been hiccups, and it's been a little bit harder to make that work out. But those spurts have just been like, whoa, there it is. That guy's a pro. So I think he is definitely the X factor. I'd say that Ousmane is a bigger X factor for this team, just because I have higher confidence that Alex Wilkins is a star. I think Ousmane has been productive, and he has had he's strung together very good weeks. But he has star potential, but I think he has a solid floor, but a really high potential. Can he inch closer to that ceiling? I think that's going to decide whether this team can be a Final Four team or whatever. Monticello DPT, I know it's literally his first day, but any intel on what J-Bat plans on bringing to the table for the basketball side specifically? We saw him go into the gym and say, anything that you need, we're going to make sure the resources are there for you. So that's what you love to hear. But outside of that, haven't heard much more beyond that, outside of just kind of like coming in hungry, coming in wanting to, show something, make a statement. So I'll do a little bit more digging on that. SEC first, with CJ Rosser trending to UNC, according to many in the know. Will UK go another year without signing a top 10 prospect? I doubt it. I think they're going to land one. More about the assistant coaching thing, we'll do that. We've talked about that. Big Blue 96, will the Denims make an appearance again this season? Doubtful, but I hope we get to see. I hope they change their minds, because I love them. I think they're sexy uniforms, and I would love to see them roll it back out with them. Bobby Blue, what is Pope's theory about offering so many guys versus targeting only a few and keying in on them? I think I know that answer, and it's because they kind of grouped them into tiers in terms of top guys, like must-haves, guys we'd love to have but don't need, guys that we're interested in if we miss on some of the top guys, and like guys that we'd like to target if things work out and he has a great senior year and whatever the case is. So that's how they're operating in that regard. They want to cast a wide net and know that they say that the Tyron Stokes thing was why they struck out with basically everybody in the 2026 class. That was that was a big sticking point with them, that they just kind of obsessed over landing the big fish and kind of sacrificed the ability to land the Caleb Holtz of the world, and go down the list of some of the other guys that they were in solid position with and could have made a move for, but opted against that. They're going into this 27 class and saying, we're not going to make that same mistake. We have a, bird in the hand. We're going to take the bird in the hand. That's why Ryan Hampton committed. That's why I wouldn't be shocked if we get a couple of quick commitments here in the early fall, as visits start ramping up and all that. So, I think they'll turn things around on the recruiting front. If you had to rank sophomore Mason Williams in the group of 2027 freshman point guards based on who you'd most want on next year's team, where would you put him? Man, that's a really tough question, because I've heard Mason Williams has been awesome. I've heard he's a future pro. I've heard he's a high floor guy. I'm a big Mason Williams fan. So top 5, and especially with the experience, I think he would, as things stand, he would be trending toward top 5 status among freshman point guards going into the following season with the Caden Daughtry's and Beckham Blacks and the Reese Alstons, and go down the list of those guys. I think he would be in that top 5 group, which is a pretty darn good group. So hopefully you get 2 of them. Hopefully we get a couple of those guys and build some real depth and real talent on next year's roster. So all right, that's all we got for that one. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Appreciate Spencer Smith, as always, for sharing his expertise on the show. He is as good as it gets at what he does. So what a nice little gift it is to have him on Sources Say whenever we can get him. And Sean Smith hosting camp at Frederick Douglass this week, so the hope is to have him on next week and hopefully get all 3 of us on the same show. And then of course we'll get Michael Moreno. I know he's the fan favorite around here, and fans love when Malachi's brother comes on and kind of shares his take on things. So we'll get something on the books with him, maybe mid-August, something like that. So appreciate everybody joining today. Find me on Twitter at Jack Pilgrim KSR if you want to go do similar mailbags where you can get your questions answered on KS Board. Make sure you go subscribe. Good deal going on right there. So make sure you go do that. And with that, we will see you next time. Go Cats.